Hello, I'm Paul Peterson. For many of us, there may come a point when we have to accept that the home we have lived in for many years is no longer suitable for our needs. But the very thought of finding affordable senior accommodation and moving to a smaller home can be daunting for even the most organized of us. Today's guest is an expert in assisting seniors and their families in taking the stress out of transitioning to a new home. And she will be sharing her advice with us and her wisdom. Please stay tuned for Aging in LA. We all know that moving can be a stressful time, but it is even more so when leaving a home that holds a lifetime of memories and treasured possessions. That, together with the practicalities of finding a new home, packing, moving, and getting settled, can seem too much to handle. But whether it's finding the perfect senior community or decorating that new home, help is at hand. Joining us today is Catherine Fritz of Together in Transition, who specializes in assisting clients to make the emotional and practical transition to a new home as easy as possible. Welcome to Aging in LA, Catherine. Thank you so much for making time for us today. Now, I have to, full disclosure, I went through this with 5 elderly women, and the moves are hell.
Well, I can understand that because that's actually part of how I came to form my business, is just seeing the process that my parents went through with both of their parents and having to be very individual and understanding what the needs were and desires of each set of parents that they were working with. And at that time, it's about 10 years ago in Texas, rural area of Texas, just not a lot of support or resources for them to reach out to. And just over time and with our aging population, I really saw the need for support services around this for both the family members and caregivers as well as the seniors.
Yeah, well, I think you identified not only the market, but a growing market. It's so funny, people wouldn't climb Mount Everest without acquiring a Sherpa guide, you know, to help them get there. Absolutely. And that's really what you provide, is some sort of guidance, because it's a nightmare. It's an emotional nightmare. And not all spouses, if you're lucky enough to still have mom and dad, actually agree on what they want for their future. That's got to be a minefield for you.
Yeah, I think that is one of the biggest challenges, is really trying to get family members to come together in agreement on how they're going to take care of mom and dad. And a lot of times, you know, things that have to be considered and talked about are really sensitive issues like the finances or the level of care and mobility and independence, and really having to be very direct about some of the situations that they're seeing. So I think just like most humans, we're reluctant to, you know, go into situations that may create conflict or difficulties in the family. But when there's health or safety issues, it's really important to start having these conversations as early as possible.
Right. Early as possible is the key here. Now, for the most part, in the opening, I talked about folks who are downsizing. All the kids are grown. The house is too big to take care of, or maybe there are too many steps. How do you help persons go through this process of leaving, you know, their life, basically, and without too much emotional distress, get them into a place more suited to their current condition?
Well, a lot of it is just starting out with conversations and almost like an interview process with both the family members and especially the seniors, if they're able and alert to make decisions. Because if they're in a mental state that they can really be involved in the process, they will be much, I think, more welcoming of the opportunity to make a change if they feel like they're having some input into what they're making decisions about. And what that really involves is, you know, kind of just going through room to room and helping identify, based on where they're going to move into, what are the things that can safely and aesthetically really go with them and that will really make them feel comfortable in their new environment.
Oh boy, I can just imagine that process of whittling it down. Now, what do you think is really important, Mom? So, whoa, oh, I can't part with that. I have to, oh, I've had this for years. I have to take my bed with me. I can.
Absolutely.
You must have heard everything.
You know, I have, and over time, I think one of the things that I value the most about my business is actually that process itself, because I sometimes know that I've heard stories from the seniors that probably the family members haven't even been, you know, made aware of.
I bet you have.
Because we pick up an object or a photo or even like a long dress, an evening gown that brings back memories, you know, of some special activity or event. And that's really a special thing for me to be able to share with an elderly client in helping them make decisions about their belongings.
Okay, but rather than just talk about this, you know, we recently followed Catherine as she talked to a senior couple, giving them information on various senior residences and programs, and then touring an outstanding local retirement community. Now, Catherine, if you would talk us through it, we'll watch this together.
Well, the definition of residential transition is confusing to a lot of people, especially the families, caregivers, and seniors. And from my perspective, there's really 4 components in this process. It's really the process of taking and moving a senior from their current home that they may have been in for 30 or 40 or 50 years and moving them into an ideal senior community that meets their needs. And my particular business actually focuses on a very wide range of support for this process, which involves 4 core activities: the placement, the household downsizing, move day coordination, and then decorating and arranging the new space so it really feels like home.
Now, are the couples able to actually go out and tour with you and see particular facilities?
Absolutely. After we've established sort of some basic criteria on the location and budget, the different services they're interested in, we usually decide on 2 to 3 sites that we're going to visit, and then we actually go and tour the facility.
Wow, this is a beautiful site. Where is this?
This is Hollenbeck Palms on the east side of Los Angeles.
Okay.
And it is a wonderful continuing care type of retirement community that has everything from independent living through skilled nursing facilities. So people can really age in place in this type of community. Now, one of the other things that I find particularly important during this process is really understanding for the senior what type of culture and stimulation is going to be important to them. Do they like lots of social activities, or do they want a more relaxed, laid-back kind of environment? And then another aspect that's really important for whether it's the elder care professional or a family caregiver to look at, what is the interaction between the staff and the residents. That's really, really important. And I actually advise my clients to not only consider visiting when I'm taking them on a tour of the facility, but going back at nighttime, in the evenings, or on weekends when executive directors or administration aren't around, and see what that interaction and support looks like.
I'm a random checker.
Yeah, I think
learned
you
my
have
lesson.
to be.
I think so.
And then there always is a situation where, you know, an elderly loved one may not be ready for a move. They may feel, like you were saying, that they can still safely stay in the home and they'll be just fine. And I really advise my clients to consider that and not push or pressure their parents to go into a place if they're not ready to do that.
Right, I understand that, because there are transitions within transitions.
Absolutely.
Sometimes non-medical in-home care may be the answer for some people, at least in the short term.
Yeah, I really let my clients know that this is a process, and we can just make an interim plan during this process where I may not be as involved at that particular moment in time, but there are options for them. I mean, one thing that some people forget about in a large city like Los Angeles is that there actually is a lot of friend and neighborhood support for seniors that may have lived in a neighborhood for 30 or 40 years. They probably have really established relationships with some of their neighbors. And a family caregiver may be able to call on some of those people and say, will you call my parents on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and another neighbor to go in and actually visit with them. So I want to really recommend and encourage people to use that kind of resource if it's available in their parents' particular situation. Then another option that I also recommend, if there is that resistance to moving, is actually having a geriatric care manager come in and do a complete assessment of the seniors as well as the environment they're living in. And like you were saying, then an actual formal plan can be put in place where if you need just some companionship care or light housekeeping or transportation to the doctors, all of those things can be thought out in advance and made plans for.
It's so informative, Catherine. How I wish I'd known you 5 years ago, because it was just chasing around town and looking at facilities. You know, you think, well, I'll do the Google search and find out what kind of services are available, and hundreds of listings come up.
Absolutely. I did the same thing when I first started the
I'm
business,
sure.
and I was overwhelmed because I saw that there were over, and I'm probably now even more, but at that time there was over 400 senior-type facilities in the major metropolitan Los Angeles area.
Yeah, but that's only about a third of what we actually need. This is something that's going to grow. I was curious, when you make your evaluation and you have a chance to talk to the people involved, is that the time to bring family in and say, now look, we're going to be downsizing, so there are going to be a lot of possessions sort of left over. Are they going to storage, or you want them? Do you really provide that kind of service too?
I do, and again, as much as possible, I want to have the senior involved in those decisions. But there are usually important pieces of furniture or photos that they really want to make sure get passed on and cared for to their family members. And so I have a process of, labeling different pieces within the household to make
stickers on the bottom.
Love the Post-its. So through that process, we identify those particular kind of family belongings, and then others, as you said, that may go to a charitable organization and be able to be let go because there isn't that same value placed on it. And then finally, there's, again, sometimes they just can't make a decision about a particular item, and if that's the case, I say get a storage unit. It's going to cost you money over time, but that may be what's going to give them the peace of mind to be able to just have that and know they can make a decision later. Yeah,
and I always tell people, since they have now identified me as part of this support service for aging people, things can change in a minute. You can think you've made the most rational choice, you've researched it carefully, and Auntie Ruth falls and breaks her hip. Now what? Now the facility you thought you had is not really appropriate to someone who's going to be in rehabilitation. It's like, oh my God.
Yeah, I think, again, it's just that level of kind of awareness and education that's needed out in the public to help people, and especially family caregivers, know what's the process when something like that happens. Because I think, probably the majority of the public doesn't realize, well, they're going to go to a convalescence or rehab facility for anywhere from, 1 to 2 to 4 weeks, and then they're going to have to get discharged to go somewhere.
Catherine, it's time to take a short break, and when we return, we will continue our discussion on finding affordable and appropriate senior housing with our special guest, Catherine Fritz. Please stay tuned. We'll be right back.
You know, it's that time of year again to clear all that annoying dry brush from around your house. In the event of a fire, dry brush is extremely combustible and can explode. By clearing brush 200 feet from your home, you create a barrier, lessening the likelihood of spreading a fire. I'll still be here when you get back! Get the message. Be prepared.
As kids, it's really important that we learn the proper way to cross a street. First, you have to stop at the curve, then look both ways to make sure there are no cars. If you see one, wait for it to pass, and when it's clear, you can cross. As kids, sometimes you have to set an example. Look both ways before you cross. Cars can't see you.
Welcome back to Aging in LA. Our topic today, taking the stress out of transitioning to a new home. Our guest, Catherine Fritz of Together in Transition. Now, Catherine, I want to make sure, I know there are people sitting out there going, where was she 5 years ago? Or I have decisions to make. How do people get in contact with you?
Well, I have both a website and a number here locally in Los
You
Angeles.
better.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear from people and help them get started and connected with the right resources. My website is www.togetherintransition.com.
Right, all one word, one together, and it's .com.
Exactly.
Okay, togetherintransitions.com. And a phone number?
310-745-2700.
Okay, one more time.
310-745-2700.
What? Okay. I have to ask, can people call you too late when they're too far down the road? Or I mean, have you encountered that situation?
No, in fact, unfortunately, that's usually when I am called.
Oh, geez.
I'll just give you a quick example. You know, for me, when I say this is a process, I'm really being sincere about that because there's different needs for timing and acceptance of, you know, making a big transition like this by the seniors. A lot of times I initiate a conversation with the family and the senior, but like I said, they may not be ready to make that move. But we've established a relationship, and so I check in with them every once in a while. But unfortunately, a situation that happened recently is I got a phone call from the son saying the mom was now in the hospital after having broken her hip, and they were going to need to find a facility for both her and her husband in the next couple of weeks.
Wow.
And when that happens, I just have to go into fast gear, you know,
Right.
getting all those information regarding the criteria and things that they're going to need to work within and services they'll need, and just present the best that I can for them at that particular time.
I understand. I know one thing that became an issue. Now, I'm a Southern California boy, so anything within 5 hours by car is my backyard. Until we had these care issues in facilities. Boy, it better be close. You can't be spending an hour, as often as you may have to go visit your loved ones, you know, going in the middle of traffic because they've called you, you know, your loved one's out of meds.
Absolutely. I think that is one of the most important things that family need to take into account. I mean, on one hand, if there's a level of independence and mobility, maybe there isn't such a high need to have them as close by at the beginning part of a residential transition. But if you're really wanting to try to make one transition for this family member for the rest of their life, then it really is important to take the time to understand where are the facilities within, you know, identifying is it a 1 or 2 or 5 mile
Right.
radius of where you're located, either work, you know, location or home location, because those calls do come up.
They do. They do. We all hate it, but the phone will ring in the middle of the
Absolutely.
night. Or in the middle of traffic. And in Los Angeles, you know, a 15-minute trip can be 2 hours.
Absolutely.
Now, what about the idea of downsizing possessions? I mean, do you go like room by room and say, well, first you ask, is this something you want to live with for in the next phase of your life? But do you go room by room and say, this is maybe not the most important item, or this is too big to take?
Yeah, there is, again, you know, really a process and planning that I go through. And my dad is an engineer, and so he taught me a lot about measurements and floor plans and things like that. And so I actually get the specific floor plan for the residence they're going to move into.
Smart.
And then look at what, you know, by their furniture can comfortably and safely move into that. And I keep, you know, emphasizing the safety because I want to set up an environment that's very clutter-free for their walking and mobility, not just now, but at a time that they may have a walker or a cane for assistance.
Catherine, in the first half of our program, we watched as you advised your clients of their options for living transition. So let's watch now as she does touch-ups to their choice of a new home just before they move in.
You're exactly right, Paul. At this point of the process, we've now completed the first 3 steps of residential transition, which is finding the ideal senior community, the household downsizing, and all the move day planning and coordination. So we're at the last step of the process, which is one of my particular favorites. It's really decorating and arranging the new space so it does feel familiar and home-like.
Plants included.
Exactly.
Wow.
And I want to emphasize that aspect of familiarity. I can't say enough how important this is for the senior family members during this process. One of the things that I do in my role is back in step 1, when I'm interviewing and talking to the seniors and family members about their needs, after we've completed that process, I ask the senior permission to take photos in their current home. And I especially look at the setup on their nightstands, what side of the bedroom they like to sleep on, what they like to have on top of their dressers, and probably another of the most important areas is the bathroom setup. Are they used to reaching to the left or right of the sink for their toothbrush and their bar of soap? And what are they expecting to see in the medicine cabinet when they move in? All of these little details add up because this is such a big change for seniors when they're moving from a place they've lived in for 40 or 50 years. And the first night they're there, how will they feel if they reach for their reading glasses and magazine and can't even find it? So I end up talking with seniors during my process of the household downsizing and really trying to understand what are those particular objects, artwork, and photos that are really special to them. And I usually learn about the stories and backgrounds and experiences that are really associated with each of these and understand why they're so important in this process.
Oh, it's so important what you're saying. Having experienced this, I would have appreciated the guidance because I didn't think about it's nice if you're in your own bathroom to have your own towel set, the things you're comfortable with.
Absolutely. And I think I encourage family members, if they have the money available, to set aside a little budget just for some new linens in the bathroom or bedroom, just to make it feel really fresh and special for the senior when they move in. And it doesn't really take a lot of money now that we have so many great discount stores available in the area.
Yes, thank goodness.
But it really is important to make it feel both familiar and comfortable, but really fresh and uncluttered. And that's my goal in this process, is to really make that a nice, smooth transition for both the senior as well as the family caregivers.
Well, I love how, just by watching the video here, how open this new place is, and you've kept it free, so there's room for a walker and with the wheelchair, and it's bound to happen. And this is all arranged for a couple, correct?
Absolutely.
Wow.
Absolutely.
That's really great. Catherine, you know, what you're doing is so important, and I don't know, I guess my personal experience was so contrary to having a guide like you in the process, and I was like, why didn't I know about you?
Well, thank you. That's really what I see my role as.
Yeah.
It's really someone that can accompany the family caregivers and the seniors through this process. I look at it like a journey. It really is. And one of the reasons I chose my company name like I did is I really feel that it is important to feel together in the process and to feel supported when you're going through such a big change like this, whether you're the senior or the family member. And I guess speaking of that, you know, caregivers I think sometimes are forgotten as part of, you know, the people that are really affected by this process. And I think one of the things that I've seen over time is really how emotionally the caregivers really have to recognize that the baton, proverbial baton, is being passed to them as now being the leaders of the family when they have to make a move for a parent like this.
And there's nothing more emotionally draining than a move. Well, once again, I'm sorry to say our time is up for today's edition of Aging in L.A. Our thanks to our guest, Catherine Fritz of Together in Transition, for helping take the stress out of transitioning to a new home. And now, it's time for today's Senior Stat Shot. Over half of persons over 65 live with their spouse. 72% of men and 42% of women still have the companionship of their married partner. The proportion living with their spouse decreases with age, especially with women. Only 30% of women over 75 years of age live with a spouse. And that's today's Senior Stat Shot. The Los Angeles Department of Aging produces this program with CityView Channel 35 so that seniors living in Los Angeles and surrounding communities are well informed on the many issues that face them in everyday life, and also to let you know of the many services that the Department of Aging offers our senior citizens. Now, we'd like to hear from you with comments on the program, what you like, what you think can be improved, and we'd like your ideas for future programs. So please give us a call. The number's there on your screen, area code 213-252-4088. That's 213-252-4088. Call us with your comments and ideas. We look forward to hearing from you. I'm Paul Peterson for the Los Angeles Department of Aging, the people here at CityView Channel 35, and all of our guests on Aging in LA. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time.